Mr. President, just to follow up on Jim's question, with the doctors saying that there might be a recurrence of coronavirus in the fall, can you just explain why is now the time to wind down that task force?
Well, because we can't keep our country closed for the next 5 years. You know, you could say there might be a recurrence, and there might be, and you know, most doctors or some doctors say that it will happen, and it'll be a flame, and we're going to put the flame out. We've learned a lot. You know, we've learned a lot about the coronavirus. We've learned a lot about this hidden enemy. It's a dangerous enemy. It's a bad enemy. You see what it does, especially for people over a certain age and people that have an infirmity. If you have diabetes, if you have a bad heart, if you have a certain problem, it just, Myron, it just goes after you. It's vicious. That's right. And we're saying that people that are over 60, 65, but over 60, we're even saying, sort of stay back for a while. We recommend you staying back for a while.
I just want to finish a follow-up. I understand you don't want to keep the country closed for 5 years, but don't you want your advisors to keep looking at this closely the way you have?
They are looking at it very closely. They are looking at it very closely. And I just said it today. I used the word for the first time, I think, in terms of what we're doing. I'm viewing our great citizens of this country, to a certain extent and to a large extent, as warriors. They're warriors. We can't keep our country closed. We have to open our country. Somebody said, we could keep it for the next 18 months. We could keep it for the next 2 years. Doug Ducey's done an incredible job as the governor of Arizona. The people aren't going to accept it. They won't accept it, and they shouldn't accept it. We have a great country. We can't keep it closed. I mean, I've had doctors say, well, why don't we close it for a couple of years? This is the United States of America. I created, with a lot of other very talented people and the people of our country, the greatest economy in the history of the world, the greatest that we've ever had, the greatest employment numbers, the best numbers we've ever had, the best stock markets. I think we had 144 days of record stock markets. And then one day they said, we have to close our country. Well, now it's time to open it up. And you know what? The people of our country are warriors, and I'm looking at it. I'm not saying anything is perfect. And yes, will some people be affected? Yes. Will some people be affected badly? Yes. But we have to get our country open, and we have to get it open soon.
This is Trump defending the notion of reopening the country amid new models showing that due to premature reopenings of states and businesses, the daily death toll will rise from 1,750 people per day to a staggering 3,000 deaths per day on June 1st. And new cases will rise from 25,000 per day to 200,000 cases per day. And so clearly, the Trump administration is taking the responsible step and increasing their effort. I'm sorry, I couldn't even finish that sentence. They're winding down the coronavirus task force. Seriously, amid news that our deaths are set to nearly double, the White House is moving to shut down the task force and replace it with, quote, something in a different form, which is Trump talk for having no plan in place whatsoever. And when he's confronted on that fact, Trump leans on this idea that he can't leave the country shut down for the next 5 years. Only no one is asking him to close it for 5 years. What we are asking is to keep it closed until at least we're not spiking in terms of new cases. Imagine if a fire department stopped putting out a fire at the height of its blaze and then complained, you can't expect us to fight this fire for 5 years. No one is asking for that. But maybe, at a bare minimum, you don't walk away while the place is completely engulfed in flames. Also, this won't be an issue in 5 years. We'll hopefully have a vaccine in 1 year. And he clearly knows that. He's just exaggerating because his priority is the economy. It's not human lives, it's not our health, it's not our safety. It is getting businesses going again because he has an election coming up in November, and if he doesn't have a thriving economy to point to, then he's got nothing. In other words, this is solely political and solely for his own benefit. By the way, nothing has changed. This has always been a political issue for Trump. That's why he opted to downplay the virus from the very beginning, in order to insulate the stock market. He wouldn't let a cruise ship with sick Americans aboard dock because he didn't, quote, want his numbers to go up. And so rather than taking the absolutely necessary steps to warn the American people, to advocate for social distancing earlier, to ensure that we had a nationwide testing infrastructure, he pretended that it was fake, called it the new Democrat hoax, said it was contained, pretended that cases would soon be down to zero, claimed that it would go away with the heat. He lied to protect himself, and in doing so, more than 70,000 Americans are dead. The crazy part is that in his desperation to err completely on the side of the economy and completely ignore the human toll, that will ultimately hurt the economy anyway. We're not gonna get back to normal until people feel safe, and watching the number of cases and deaths surge because of relaxing restrictions isn't going to make anyone feel safe. It's gonna make them feel like they're going to die. And so in his desperation to prop up the economy at the expense of everything else, Trump is only ensuring that it remains hobbled even longer. He goes on to admit that some people will be, quote, affected badly, which is quite the euphemism for die, because rest assured, that's what that means. What he's saying, with no reservations whatsoever, is that sacrificing American citizens is a risk that Trump is willing to take in his desperation to get the economy back up before November. So if you're wondering whether the guy who was willing to get himself impeached over his re-election has learned anything since then, the answer is that not only is he willing to risk impeachment, he's now willing to risk hundreds of thousands of American lives, all so he can get reelected. So he will continue to disregard the advice of public health experts that he never took into account. He will continue to let cases rise and deaths mount, and he will continue to paint a rosy picture of things that bear no resemblance to the reality of what's happening. But you can't talk your way out of people dying, and with over 70,000 deaths so far, with more and more people in this country knowing someone who's been infected or even died, Americans are finally beginning to realize that Trump's not interested in facing reality. He's only interested in selling a fairy tale that'll help him get reelected.